There were many adult eyes looking at me with troubled expressions. They all reached out their hands to me, but I didn't know which one to take. Finally, my knees gave way, and I collapsed to the ground, crouching there. That's when I woke up. It's been a while since I've seen that. I pulled off my t-shirt, which was sticking to my skin with sweat, and got up. I got out of bed and stared at the wall. There, several certificates with my name, Ethan Foster, written on them were hanging. A gold prize I received for a book report when I was in elementary school. In middle school, I had left my mark every year in the soccer club I joined. Up until I was 15, when my sister was born, I was desperate. Bringing these solemn pieces of paper home would make my dad and mom jump for joy. It's no use me having them, is it? It was when I approached the wall and reached for the picture frame. The door to my room opened with a bang. Ethan, you need to get up soon. Oh, you are already up. Knock before you enter my room. How many times do I have to tell you? It's your fault for not locking it, Ethan. My sister, Lily, struck a salute pose and smiled like the sun. It's rare for Lily to be up before me. Ethan, when are you talking about? I'm already 12. I haven't been late since I got into the upper grades. Such a smart aleck. Who do you think followed you to school every day when you missed the group walk to school? As I exaggeratedly sighed, Lily shrugged and laughed. It was a typical, peaceful, happy Sunday morning. Anyone would think so. But between me and Lily, there was an invisible wall. There was a thick, high wall. Ethan, your room isn't cleaned up at all. Are you gonna make it? How much longer until the move? As we walked down the stairs, Lily asked. I couldn't see the expression on Lily's face, who was walking ahead of me, as she talked to me. There's about 3 weeks left. So, Lily, you gotta learn to wake up on your own. You're so persistent. Aren't you gonna be lonely without me, Ethan? I was at a loss for words. There are times in these everyday conversations when I don't know what to say. If I say I'll be lonely, Lily would surely be happy. But if I said I was truly lonely, it would be a lie. If I were to speak my mind, I'd want to say that I'll finally feel a weight off my shoulders. After all, I've always thought I shouldn't be in this house. Lily must have found it strange that I didn't reply. Before entering the living room, she turned back to look at me. When I smiled to cover up, Lily also smiled vaguely. Mom, Ethan's awake. Mom, who was standing in the kitchen, turned around. Good morning, Ethan. Mom greeted me with a smile similar to Lily's, and I waved back. I don't resemble my mom, dad, or Lily. That's right. The summer I was 8, when I lost my parents, the people who are now my mom and dad reached out to me, even though I hadn't known their faces or even their names until that day. Until 19 years ago, I was Ethan Smith, the person who took me in when I lost my home and family. Who is now serving breakfast in front of me is Susan Hamilton. She is my mom now. Do you think it would be too plain to have the flowers on each table be just white and orange? Caitlin spread out the blueprint of the venue on the table and looked earnestly at the planner. I think it depends on the number of flowers. Does the groom have any preferred colors? I'm fine with anything. As I answered, looking down, Caitlin gently touched my arm. Holding the wedding is just my whimsy. Ethan's just tagging along, so I'm really grateful he's here for the planning. I whispered sorry with just a movement of my lips to Caitlin, who tilted her head and smiled at me. In a month, Caitlin and I will become husband and wife. A week before we make it official, we'll move into the house we chose together, and 6 months later, we'll hold the wedding. The venue will have 6 tables prepared. That must have been adjusted for me, since I don't have any relatives to invite. On the first day of planning, Caitlin said, it'll be enough if we can just invite family and close friends, right? Regarding the flowers, I'll create some image samples and send them to you before our next meeting. Please do. Then, let's move on to the next item. The planner put away the blueprint. Next, she brought out the schedule for the day of the event. I swallowed some iced tea to moisten my dry throat. Whether she knew of my resolve or not, Caitlin's fingers, resting on my arm, tightened. We've heard it's going to be a ceremony in front of guests. We confirmed at our last meeting that the usual flow is fine. Shall we proceed with that? Yes. We're currently thinking about our vows, so we should have them ready by next time. Caitlin glanced at me. I nodded lightly and scratched the tip of my nose. The planner shrugged. I'm relieved. It's such an important day for you both. I was a bit worried, feeling it might be overstepping, but I was concerned that the groom was not involved at all. Caitlin's expression softened. The tension that had been scattered across her face until a moment ago began to fade. Now, we'd like to fill in the reception schedule. We understand that friends from your college days will give the toast and lead the cheers. Jess, we've already asked and received their consent. Next to Caitlin in the planner, moving the conversation forward, I took a piece of ice from my empty glass and popped it into my mouth. I know. My attitude, showing I'm not keen on having a wedding, is making Caitlin anxious. But imagining how the Hamiltons, not my real family, would feel attending my wedding keeps me from being proactive. I'm taking advantage of Caitlin's understanding of these feelings. Shall we follow the letter to your parents with speeches from representatives of both families? We're fine with that, but what about Ethan? As we were nearing the end of confirming the reception flow, Caitlin put her finger to her chin, showing she was thinking about something. Then, she turned serious eyes towards me. What do you mean? I don't have any particular thoughts about Caitlin reading a letter to her parents. Don't you have something you want to tell your parents, Ethan? Caitlin's round eyes wavered slightly. Hold on, I get that it's common for the bride to read a letter to her parents at the reception, but I've never heard of the groom doing the same. I looked towards the planner for help, and she too frowned as if troubled. It's indeed not something we hear often. The groom is also in charge of the closing remarks, but it's not unheard of, right? Caitlin's usually soft voice became firm, perhaps due to too much tension. Caitlin's fist made on top of her skirt was trembling. It's true that there are those who request it. Caitlin and the planner both turned their gaze towards me. It seemed like I was the one who had to make the final decision. Just as I was about to shake my head, Caitlin's small hand enveloped mine. The warmth from Caitlin, her heat, transferred to me. Please, let me think about it. My saying so signaled the end of today's meeting. I became an adopted son to the Hamiltons 19 years ago, during the summer when I turned 8. That January, I had lost my parents in a car accident. At the time, I don't think I fully understood what it meant to be without parents. I probably missed the timing to feel sad about the sudden farewell. I understood the meaning, but I hadn't comprehended the sadness or hardship. About a week after I started living at my paternal uncle's house, the first place to take me in, I was given a room. That first night I slept alone. I was finally able to cry. I thought I was muffling my sobs with the blanket, but I was just an 8-year-old kid after all. My uncle noticed my crying and came into the room. I remember the warmth of his hand patting my back. Even though the hole left by my mom and dad couldn't be filled, that night I decided I would live on in this house. I never imagined my uncle harbored feelings so contrary to my determination. After the 49th day memorial service, my uncle called me into his room. My uncle's shoulders slumped as he held up a tag with the names Michael Smith and Elizabeth Smith and my real parents' names on it. Then he said, "Ethan, I am sorry." He apologized. Then, I moved from one Smith family relative's house to another. Over 3 months, I stayed with my paternal uncle, aunt, grandparents, and maternal uncle and grandparents. 5 households in total. All of them said the same thing. We can fully share your grief. Not understanding what they meant, I became lost. The woman who came to me at the Child Guidance Center offered me 2 options. Either I go to a children's shelter or to the Hamilton family, who was hoping to adopt me. Honestly, I was scared. I was afraid of getting my hopes up, only to be rejected again. I was about to choose the child welfare facility when I felt a hand on my back. My paternal uncle, who had been listening beside me, patted my back and suggested, "Why don't we meet the Hamiltons once?" My uncle always supported me. Since I was young, whenever my parents scolded me, he would pat my head and say with a warm smile, "Let's leave it at that," like the winter sun's warmth. Even on the night I was first rejected, my uncle cried and apologized to me repeatedly. He was a kind man. He must have deeply regretted not being able to take me in. Understanding my uncle's feelings, I agreed to visit the Hamiltons. After that, everything happened quickly. The Hamiltons, now my parents, had no issues with their income or home environment. Strangely, I never felt any barriers between us. I first met the Hamilton couple in spring. After several meetings, by the end of summer, I had decided to become a part of the Hamilton family. On the way back, Caitlin, who had been listening to my story, sniffled. The Hamiltons wanted me because they couldn't have children of their own. But now they have Lily. Ever since she was born 12 years ago, I shouldn't have been in that house. I plan to legally separate from the Hamiltons when I leave, and I'm sure it'll be inconvenient for them to attend the wedding, so I don't want to cause any unnecessary trouble. Caitlin, sniffling loudly one last time, said, I can't believe those parents would think that, with a pout. I understand that too. Both the Hamiltons' dad and mom raised me just like they did Lily. If I got into trouble, they'd scold me, and whether or not my efforts showed results, they'd cheer for me with both hands raised. In the morning, they'd greet me with a gentle smile like the spring sunshine, saying, "Good morning," and at night, before I went to sleep, they'd calm me in the quietness like the winter night sky. But I was always scared. Scared of when they might disappear again. Scared of the uncertainty of when they might apologize. In the quiet car, I glanced at Caitlin's expression. Caitlin was again touching her chin, thinking about something. Mom, this? It was Sunday, with the move just a week away. I had come down holding a picture frame that had been hanging in my room. In the living room, well lit by sunlight, there was no need to turn on the lights on a sunny day. Mom, bathed in the sunlight, was hunched over the desk. What are you looking at? You'll hurt your eyes getting that close. When I peered at what Mom was looking at, several photo albums were spread out. These are old albums. The photos have faded so much, I have to squint to see them properly. Really? Maybe it's not just because they're old. Maybe they weren't stored properly. Were they kept somewhere in the sunlight? I sat down next to Mom and looked at the photos. There was a baby between two women, one of whom must be a younger Mom. Next to them, a woman who resembled Mom was smiling in bed. This is you, right? Yes. The one sleeping is my sister. The baby you're holding, is that my cousin? Mom nodded slowly but shallowly. She was smiling, but her eyebrows drew a neat furrow. Mom rubbed the wrinkles between her brows with her wrinkled fingers. I'm not just nostalgic for the old days. She looked sad and regretful about something. Jess, that's my sister's child. To me, that would be my nephew. Then, that's Lily's cousin. I've never heard that story before. There's no need to talk about it. Contrary to the coldness of those words, Mom's voice was warmer than usual and tinged with emotion. I was about to ask why, but then closed my mouth. Mom's unchanged expressions and surlier stopped me from speaking. Sounds from outside the window flowed into the living room. The laughter of children playing in the middle of a Sunday afternoon. The sound of cars and the noises of life leaking from neighboring houses. All these sounds helped fill the silence that had formed between me and Mom. She seems like a kind person. I managed to squeeze out the words. Mom's eyes widened. Your aunt seems kind and warm. I wish I could have met her. With a trembling voice, Mom said, yes, I wish I could see her too, and closed the album. Even without being explicitly stated, I understood. Mom couldn't meet her sister or this nephew. Being told she couldn't have children and hence couldn't see her nephew anymore. It's not surprising that 19 years ago, Mom wished for an adopted child. If Mom and this nephew could still meet today, maybe she wouldn't have needed me. I quietly looked at the nephew locked away in the album. I didn't even know his name. I sent a message to Mom, sorry for the suddenness. I might be late, so please leave dinner for me, and put my smartphone in my pocket. I locked eyes with Caitlin, who was staring back at me. I got it, just like I promised. At noon, I had messaged Caitlin about the album Mom and I looked at yesterday. Immediately, Caitlin sent a brief reply. Get the family register, and let's meet at the usual cafe after work. Despite replying several times, Caitlin didn't respond at all. The read receipt only appeared after she had finished work. In a rush, I dashed to the government office before it closed and obtained a copy of the family register, because I couldn't grasp Caitlin's true intentions or goals. Caitlin, a classmate since high school, has always enveloped me, pulling me along while overlooking my loneliness, insecurities, and my parents' feelings. Caitlin never delved deeply into my past. She silently digested the bits and pieces of information I shared, without saying anything. For the first time, Caitlin brought up my birth. I felt that she had some concerns about my situation. But as soon as we entered the cafe, I realized my mistake. Caitlin, already seated and waiting for me, looked as steady as ever, without a hint of wavering. Caitlin pushed her cup of cafe latte to the side, I slid the family register I had just obtained across the table to her. "Did you look at it, Ethan?" I shook my head in response to Caitlin's direct question. "My family register is complicated with all that's written in it. I didn't see the need to check it myself now." "Why did you want to see it?" "It was something about your mom's reaction that got me thinking." "My mom's?" "Just look at it, okay?" Prompted by Caitlin's words, we both looked down. As expected, the document started with my name. "No way. This can't be true." Contrary to my trembling lips, Caitlin let out a sigh of relief, as if she had confirmed her suspicions. "Maybe this person is your mom's sister," she mentioned. Caitlin's slender finger pointed to the section listing my biological parents. "It's in the mother column of the persons recorded in the family registry." On it was written Jessica Hamilton. "So, the first adoption was by the Smiths." Caitlin continued as her finger moved down. "The adoptive father and adoptive mother fields under adoption details listed Michael Smith and Elizabeth Smith. Those are the names of my parents, who I thought were my real parents. You were taken in by the Smiths before you even turned 1. Nobody ever told me that. Maybe they planned to tell you when you were a bit older, but never got the chance." I remembered what the Smith family had said to me, that they couldn't share in my sorrow. My uncle and grandparents had said the same. It wasn't just the sorrow of losing my parents. Maybe they meant they couldn't share in the grief of discovering this truth about my birth. They had to convey to me that those two weren't my real parents. Was my uncle trying to say he couldn't bear the responsibility and resolve for that? Caitlin's hand covered mine, heavy with confusion that felt like smoke was about to pour from my head. In a quiet voice, she said, "Let's turn the page." Next was the annulment with the Smith family. I heard about this when going to the Hamiltons. It was supposed to be a special adoption, but it wasn't like that. Below the note of dissolution with the Smith family, there was another adoption record. It listed Jason Hamilton and Susan Hamilton, my current parents. "I need a moment to sort this out," I said, pouring coffee into my dry mouth. Caitlin had been waiting for me for what seemed like an eternity. The cafe's other patrons had all changed in the time we sat there. During that time, Caitlin had ordered 2 more lattes. "Okay." At my word, Caitlin looked up. "I'm Jessica Hamilton's son, originally adopted by the Smith family under unknown circumstances. Intended to grow up with them, I found myself without a home after their passing. That's when my mom, from the Hamilton family, took me in." Caitlin, who had been nodding along to my story, finally spoke. "They said it was a closed adoption because you believed the Smiths were your biological parents, and saying it was a closed adoption was the only way to explain the annulment to you. In reality, it was just an open adoption with the Smiths that simply got annulled." I nodded shallowly in agreement with Caitlin's understanding. Caitlin's third latte was also empty now. The glass that held my iced coffee had nothing but ice left. "Understanding is one thing, but accepting it is another," I said, looking down. A white handkerchief slid into my view. "You liar, Ethan." Caitlin's voice was soft. If I looked up, I was sure Caitlin would be smiling kindly at me. Like a child, I cried. From the handkerchief I received, it felt like my tears could have been wrung out. The first faces I remembered were those of the Smith parents. My memories are hazy, but until today, I never doubted that those two were my parents. They scolded me on the days I messed up, celebrated with me whether my efforts bore fruit or not, and hugged me. After entering elementary school, I got into a fight with a classmate over something trivial, which didn't turn into a big deal. But my parents listened to my side of the story, which I couldn't accept, for a long time. Though I was usually required to be in bed by 9, that day, they stayed up with me, nodding along to my story until I began to drift off. They never invalidated my thoughts, but also didn't dismiss the other person's perspective. In the end, Dad said, "It's a miracle to understand everyone. But even with those you can understand, you can still shake hands. Ethan, knowing this now, you can become a strong, kind person," and hug me again. Even my uncle and grandparents, who couldn't live with me, loved me. They always came to see me on my birthdays and Christmas. And then, after moving to the Hamiltons, I must have been quite unstable. Obsessed with being a good kid and excelling at school, Dad invited me for a game of catch. I remember Mom sitting on a bench with a lunchbox. The silent game of catch began to fill with conversation as the sun set and my arms started to ache. That's when it happened. Dad suddenly called my name, Ethan, and threw the ball. What? I threw the ball back while asking. After rolling the ball in his glove, Dad looked up and said, "Ethan, thank you for being born." The ball landed cleanly in my glove. After that, Dad kept saying, "Thank you, being your parent makes me happy. I'm the luckiest person in the world." Why did I forget? Even after Lily was born, Dad always looked at me with the same eyes as on the day of that game of catch. Why did I continue to doubt their love for me? When my tears had dried, I noticed Caitlin had moved to the seat next to me. "Ethan, listen to me." Not understanding her intention, I turned my probably red eyes towards Caitlin. "Don't you want to know why you first went to the Smiths? Let's find out and make peace with it before leaving home." Caitlin squeezed my hand with force. Ethan and Caitlin looked at each other for a while, and then I nodded slightly. "Ethan, is this all the stuff?" Lily, dressed in sweats, pointed to the last cardboard box left in the room. 6 days had passed since I found out about my birth on Monday. Today, I'm leaving home. In the end, I hadn't asked anything from Dad or Mom. Leaving home means you'll miss playing with me, right? I had prioritized my time with Lily. Who would say such things? But that's hardly an excuse. I didn't sign up for this heavy lifting. My whole day off is gone, and I should at least get paid for this. Lily, you're the one who said you wanted to experience moving. I handed a sports drink to Lily, who pouted and complained. Even after chugging half the bottle in a satisfying gulp, Lily's mood didn't lighten. "All right, what do you want?" "I'll go ahead, but no cash, okay? You know part-time jobs are against school rules, right?" After Lily laughed, saying, "You're so serious, Ethan." She looked at me with an unusually mature expression. "Please, have a proper talk with Mom." Lily took another sip of her sports drink. "What should I talk about?" My voice was probably tense. I didn't know how much Lily knew. I couldn't say anything careless. "I don't know, but Mom's been really down lately. Ever since you decided to leave, something's been off. Even when we all used to eat together, it was fun, but lately, it hasn't been." Lily covered her face with the towel she had slung over her shoulder. Then, with a trembling voice, she kept saying, "Please, talk to Mom. I love Mom and Dad, and you, Ethan. I absolutely hate the idea of you leaving with bad feelings between us." Lily's weak fist hit my arm. Again and again, Lily's feelings were directed at me. "I'm sorry, I'm a failure as your brother." Lily has grown up so much. 12 years ago, she could fit in my arms, but now she's grown to about the height of my chest. Her hands, her back, her heart. While I stood still, Lily was growing up. I felt a sharp pain in my nose. I was happy to see Lily's growth, but also felt a bit lonely. "Thank you." Lily looked up at my words and said with a cheeky smile, "Really, I'm thankful." In the emptied room, it was just my mom and me, facing each other. Lily had gone out to buy lunch with Dad. She must have been trying to be considerate in her own way. Mom said, sitting formally on the floor, "It's hard wood, you know. That must hurt." There was a shadow hiding behind my mom's smile. The same expression she had when we were looking through the album that day. I pulled out the folded family register from my pocket. I spread it out on the floor between my mom and me. "I guess it's about time you knew," my mom said without surprise or grief. It was as if she had resigned herself to it. As if in contemplation, he took a deep breath in and out, then opened his mouth. "Ethan, as it says here, you're my nephew." After I nodded firmly, my mom also nodded once. It felt like we were matching our feelings, confirming the truth between us. Knowing the truth, speaking the truth, nothing would change. It was like confirming our resolve and trust in each other. "Your real mom, my sister Jessica Hamilton, died soon after giving birth to you. She was always frail. When we heard she was pregnant with you at 18, the whole family opposed it. Mom too. I was only 13 at the time, and I loved her very much. But that's no excuse, is it?" Strangely, I wasn't shocked. If the 15-year-old me, holding Lily for the first time, had heard this, I might have been drowned in sorrow. My mom moved a bit closer and continued, "But you know, my sister disappeared, almost as if she were running away to have the child of the man she loved. She left only a letter for our mom. When I rushed to the hospital and met you just after you were born, I realized how foolish I had been to oppose her. I truly felt that, from the bottom of my heart. My mom's voice and hands started to shake. My sister told me that the man who was your father was no longer with her. That's why I don't know anything about your father. I'm sorry. If he finds out, he'll get mad, I said, trying to lighten the mood, to which my mom shrugged. I wish it were just anger. When my sister passed away, I was just a kid myself and felt utterly powerless. I often reminisced about feeling helpless while holding you in my arms, surrounded by the Smiths. So, I grew up, got a job, and got married, ensuring I could welcome you at any time. Of course, I believe it would be best if you didn't come to me and continue to live happily with your adoptive family. The Smiths love me too, I said. Yes, as soon as we took you in, we felt that way. That's why we thought we must love you even more than that. I tilted my head, not understanding what Mom said. Seeing me like this, Mom smiled softly. At first, I felt compelled to protect you because I love my sister. It's more like a duty for me. But after reuniting with you, I wanted to be a place where you, who have been loved by so many, could belong. Tears were streaming down my cheeks. What Ethan needed was a place to belong, amidst all the love but also the uncertainty. That's what your dad told me. My mom's fingers wiped my tears. Congratulations on your marriage. Her voice was not just shaking but trembling. Thank you for everything, I said, crouching down and clutching the family register to my chest. Thinking of all the people who have supported and loved me. My hair, stiff with wax and spray, felt heavy. I wondered how many times today I had taken a deep breath, feeling the constraints of formal attire. Next to me, Caitlin, wrapped in an orange dress, was giving me a thumbs up. From the groom, a letter to the family. The woman presiding over the event echoed her stern voice to the audience. I slowly stood up and walked to the stand microphone. Cough once and look ahead. I looked forward, turning my body towards where my dad, my mom, and Lily were sitting. A letter from the groom might be unfamiliar to you, but there are people I desperately want to express my gratitude to. May I take a moment of your time and the space? As I asked, applause filled the venue. Then, I pulled an envelope from my inner pocket, taking out a single piece of stationery. On that single piece of stationery, I wrote down 5 names: Jessica Hamilton, Michael Smith, Elizabeth Smith, Jason Hamilton, and Susan Hamilton. I have 3 moms and 2 dads, I announced. A murmur arose from the crowd, quickly settling down. Caitlin's parents were nodding with serene expressions. I was glad I had talked about this before the day we registered our marriage. Lily wasn't surprised or crying. She looked serious, waiting for what I would say next. When I share just this part of the story, I often hear responses like, "That must have been tough," or "You've had it hard." But honestly, I didn't find it difficult or struggle. Sure, there were nights when I felt a bit lonely. Yet, in hindsight, I realize I spent every day in a warm, loving home. I turned the stationery to face the audience. There were gasps of surprise. The only names on the stationery were those of my 5 parents. I had told Caitlin that I wanted to speak from the heart, standing here, without any other prepared words. Caitlin agreed without hesitation, even saying, "That's so like you," with a smile. "Because all of you loved me, I am here today. I am the luckiest person in the world. Please let me express my heartfelt gratitude to the 5 parents who gave birth to me and raised me." I walked up to the Hamilton family's table. I made eye contact with Dad, Mom, and Lily in turn. "Thank you for being my family. I am grateful for everything, and I look forward to continuing our journey together." Applause erupted from the venue. Amid the ceaseless cheers, my dad and mom embraced me. Looking up to the heavens, I also said, "Thank you," in a clear voice, to my 3 parents.